I forget Barry likes to be acting in these films. So you're in a diner. You were in Diner, were you not, Barry?
No, not in Diner.
Rain Man. No, you're Rain Man.
Yes, I played a doctor in Rain Man.
How do you do that? Do you direct yourself? Do you get somebody to direct you? What are you doing? You want to be an actor?
I didn't want to do it. What happened is the actor I had for the role was running over on the other film he was doing, and suddenly I get this call that he's not available, and we have to shoot in one day, and I don't have time to recast. And Dustin said, "Why don't you do the psychiatrist?" And I said, and I literally couldn't find somebody that quickly. So I said, what I'll do is I'll shoot the scene and I'll edit it right away. And if I don't like the way it looks, then
I'll get somebody else.
I'll get somebody else. And that's what happened.
Sidney Pollack used to play himself in movies too. He played himself, and he was great in Tootsie. He played the manager. He played Hoffman's agent in that movie. They were at the Russian tea room. You know, they sit at the Russian tea room. So he played.
He was very funny.
He was good in the movie. He had the frizzy hair, the glasses. Oh, I love it. And he passed away at a young age too.
He did. I know.
He was a wonderful director. You're a director. Who's your favorite? What movie did you go to a movie for the director because you know he's going to do a good movie, or does Barry Levinson go to the movie because he's got the actors? Or what towards you to go to a movie? It's
a combination of things. One is there's certain directors I want to see what they're going to do.
So you do go for director.
So I want to see that. On the other hand, sometimes it's going to be certain subjects. I go, well, that's interesting. I'm curious what that's about. Like most people.
When the Oscars are announced, do you go to all 10 or 12 movies, the finalists to win the Oscars?
Well, nowadays they send you.
So you had them all.
They give you the DVD as well.
Right. So you saw Billboards.
Them, yeah.
Which one was your favorite?
I like Billboards a lot.
Yeah, good movie.
I thought that was fun. It was a totally crazy film.
No closure. I didn't like there wasn't a lot of closure in the movie. That's what I didn't like about it.
Yeah, sort of.
They didn't find a person, for crying out loud. I want to tell me a story. Clean it up.
The ending.
I want the end. All right, now what? I know this movie settles in the 2 weeks. When Paterno breaks the record, I remember that
409.
409. He did it at home. I forget who they beat.
Yeah, he beat
somebody at home, right?
Illinois,
and then he's getting ready for Nebraska and everything else. So you center your film. This is a very complicated thing to do. I mean, you got to find something that ties everything together. You center it in that 2-week period. Talk about that for a sec.
Well, it's going from the highest high to the lowest low, because in that 2-week period, he ends up winning 409 games, making him the winningest coach in the history of college football. 1 week later, the grand jury presentment comes out about all this sexual abuse that took place in terms of on children, etc., of which Sandusky was involved in, and what did he know or didn't know, etc. And all of a sudden, it just keeps building, and then literally a week and a half after winning the 409th game, he's fired, at Penn State, and then within days goes into the doctors and finds out that he has cancer, and has only a short period of time to live.
So he wins the title. He has this Sandusky thing. It's just all in 10 days this occurred to him?
2 weeks total, the whole thing.
Wow. Do you find Paterno a sympathetic character based on age and, the fact that he ended so horrendously? Or do you find Paterno as a person of higher authority who is awful because you should have known better? What does Barry Levinson find him? Or somewhere in between?
Well, I think what makes it interesting to it, I think you can be sympathetic to him, and yet you can draw your own conclusions about, what didn't he do and what should he have done. In other words, I think that's what makes it more complicated. Because life isn't just so clearly black and white. Oh, is it the bad guy? Is it the good guy? The complications of it are in that journey, in that 2-hour period. I think we explore all of those, and I think we have mixed feelings about a lot of it. And then ultimately, as the piece builds, then I think you start to see the pieces coming together.
So you're more interested in this story from Paterno's perspective than relaying that terrible monster in Sandusky, correct?
Yeah, because I think it's almost a separate story. If you want to cover, a pedophile in terms of Sandusky, that's a whole other story. But how does a man who had high principles get involved in not doing what he should have done? Not bringing it to the police, and all the things that might have gone with it.
Bigger than anybody in the program, he could have gotten Sandusky out of there and all those.
I mean, he was like the king of Happy Valley.
Absolutely was. Yeah.
So what happened? And I think that's what we try to show, the pieces of it. And what didn't he do? I mean, you know, he checked on things, but he didn't follow up on it. And you say, well, a man that's that highly regarded didn't do that.
Yeah.
Where's the sense of responsibility?
Do you have to know? Did you do research? You're a good sports fan, so you probably knew a lot about Paterno anyway, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, you knew he was at Penn State since 1965. Did Pacino know that too?
Oh yeah.
Or
sure.
does Pacino got to do a little bit more research in the character?
Al knew a lot about Paterno.
He did. Okay.
But he obviously, when you're going to do it, then you want to even know more. And I think we all wanted to know as much as we can because, you know, that'll help inform, you know, little moments in the script.
So Al is attracted to doing the movie because it is Paterno and it's something different for him, right? At this age and all the great accomplishments. He don't do anything if he doesn't want.
Right.
But he wants to be attracted to the part, correct?
Yeah, because I think it's a complicated character. I think it's a complicated character that is worthwhile to explore. I don't know that you've seen that. I mean, it is sort of that when they talk about, I know it's an overused word, you talk about Shakespearean, you know, but here's this guy. He was referred to as like, you know, he was the emperor of Happy Valley with his university. He was there forever. And all of a sudden, in a short period of time, he tumbled down. And what took place. And I think that's where the story lives and breathes.
Is it harder to do a film in which you know most of your audience knows the story? You know, but people are going to watch this tomorrow night and watch this on HBO. Chris Russo, I know most of us. A, it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
B, it's a major. It was on cover of. Everybody knows something about it. Well, if you just do a story on Rain Man, you do the diner, and that is your deal. This one, everybody's going to have an opinion on it because we all know a lot about Paterno. Does it make it harder to direct a movie like that?
It makes it more complicated than this because it's not just simply the story. Because we know some of the facts, but we don't know a lot. We know the top side of it all, right? Because, you know, when you're doing the news, they're not talking about all these things that are going on in terms of what was happening in the house. Suddenly his whole family is being blindsided by all of these things. The press is outside. What was going on in the house? When you're suddenly hearing that your father is supposedly complicit in these events that took place. You know, what is that like for the son, for the daughter, for the wife?
So you explore that.
So you're trying to explore all of that, which is something we don't know, and that's one of the more interesting aspects of it.
Does a director? I mean, be fair. Do you read reviews? Do you care what the critics think, or does Barry Levinson have such a tremendous resume he doesn't really care if Chris Russo likes the movie?
I don't read them much anymore. You know, and sometimes, you know, when you do a film where you say, okay, we're probably going to get 50-50 at best because of the subject matter, and you can begin to figure out where a critic will basically come down on it positively or negatively. You can begin to figure out some of those things. But I don't pay as much attention as when I first started out. And it goes back to the very when one of the earliest movies in terms of diner, and there was a review that was so negative. The very first reviews that came out were really devastatingly negative.
Oh, really?
And then all of a sudden, I always think Diner, in a sense, was like it sums up your entire career in one movie, because the movie was considered, you know, terrible, unreleasable. The studio didn't like it, you know. Bad, and all of a sudden it like turned around, and all of a sudden it's like it's wonderful, it's terrific, or whatever. It all happened with one movie, you know. And so you went through two sides,
all the cycles,
all of it at once on one film.
Does a director feel more responsible when he knows it's a big budget movie and there's more money involved to go out there? Geez, we got to make this really good. You know, Diner it was as you said, $5 million budget. It was sort of, you could take a couple chances, and if it bombs, it's not the end. Nobody's going to lose a ton of money. When you make a big movie and it bombs, oh my God, look at all the money we lost. Hollywood did this for paying this guy this kind of money. Is there more pressure on a director under those circumstances?
I guess to some degree, if you're making a big, expensive, high-profile movie, I mean, that certainly comes with the territory.
Was Rain Man a high-profile movie in pre-production and things like that?
Because it was, you know, Dustin and Tom Cruise. But because of the subject matter, it wasn't like, you say, well, it's about an autistic and his brothers take him across country. You wouldn't exactly jump up and down and say, well, I got to go see this movie. You know what I mean? So it was considered off-center. And as I said, the studio didn't believe in it at all.
Right.
And we started slowly and it built. I mean, it's when I think about it now, the movie did $500 million in 1988 dollars. The movie only cost $24 million, and when we made it, it did $500 million.
Wow!
It's you can't even guess at that kind of success box office.
Right, 88 beat Working Girl in 88 because I love the Working Girl. Mike Nichols, another guy you probably love Nichols, comedy and everything else.
He did comedy, drama. He was wonderful.
He was
great.
This movie with Paterno, did you have a big budget to work with here or not?
No, not that big a budget. It's you're just paying
Pacino essentially.
You're
right?
paying Pacino, and you make it for say 37 days. You shoot relatively quickly, but it's comfortable. I mean, I didn't object to a tight schedule. It worked out well.
Did you do any shots at Penn State? Did they allow you to do any shots at Penn State?
We couldn't get on the campus.
Wouldn't let you do it on the campus.
No, so we would shoot from a block and a half away, and we would pick up some shots. But we did the rest all here in New York.
What sort of reaction are you expecting from that Penn State campus on this movie? Because that's where it's really going to resonate.
Well, I mean, well, here's the thing, because on one thing, you got the students that are there weren't there back then. It's a whole new, it turns over, right? So it's like
10 years ago, it's a different group.
Yeah, so it's a totally different group. So I don't know what their attitudes are, but I would assume that you have to be a certain amount of negativity that'll come out of Penn State.
But I'll tell you one thing about, and I dealt with all the calls, one thing about that Penn State alumni base, they are so loyal to Paterno, even today.
Yeah.
And the folks there, they are very loyal to Paterno.
Yeah.
The statues and everything else. Do you get into the statue, what they do with the statue?
No, we had, not what happened to the statue, but we showed the statue.
Oh, you did show the statue.
We show it, and then you can see there's a little demonstration going on towards the very end of the film.
How do you find the characters to play I know that Mrs. Paterno, she's got a good part, Paterno's wife in this movie.
Yeah.
The son, I heard, did an excellent job.
Both sons, yeah.
Both sons. So you looking for character actors?
Yeah.
How'd you find the folks there? Let me hear.
You just start seeing a whole lot of actors. Because
you have them read the parts. You have them read the parts when they come in.
Yeah, they'll read the parts. We'll go over it. They may come back a few times, go over some stuff, and you whittle it down after seeing. I don't know how many people we'll see for that.
And that's your call specifically.
Yeah,
you make that decision who you want to.
Because you got to put together. You have to put them together like an ensemble. It's almost like the same thing in an orchestra. You got to have, you want this one with this rhythm and another one like that, and then somehow it'll be, cohesive when you put it all together.
You may not take the best actor that was available for the part, but he fits the part or she fits the part better than somebody else might, a bigger star, correct?
Yeah. I mean, look, there are some great stars, but they wouldn't work for the film. And in a sense, they need to be very much of a family unit for what we're doing.
Would you have done the movie if Pacino didn't play Paterno?
Well, I mean, he was the one that basically came to me with the thought of doing.
Oh, he came to you.
Yeah.
Oh, he came to
and
you.
And then when I talked to him about it, and then we went and developed a script. So from the conversations I had with him, because he wanted to do it, and so then I told him my thoughts. Then I brought in Deborah Kahn, who's a terrific, writer, and she came in and then she did the draft.
How about that? So Al got you to do it, not the other way around in a lot of ways. We'll come back and wrap it up with Barry Levinson. Nice to have you with us on a busy program here in Mad Dog.